friends, I'm here today to talk about the top 13 books that I read that were not YA. A lot of my reading is YA normally, but I have been branching out and reading some other genres. So we're going to dive into that. I divided it into adult and middle grade. So we're going to talk about the adult first because those I will have shorter thoughts on, and then the middle grade I'll probably have longer thoughts on because a lot of these are series and authors I've been reading for a while. A lot of the adult books are new to me authors, which I'm super excited to explore more of in 2023, so let's get into it. The first photo I'm going to show you is Jade City by Fonda Lee. This is the first book in the Green Bone Saga series. I read this early in the year and I really enjoyed it. So here's a pretty photo and then we'll get into the details. Everyone and their mother has heard about this book because it's been super popular, and like the third book came out this year, I think. I really love this, but you basically follow this society where the powerful people can use jade to sort of enhance their abilities. It really gave me Mortal Instruments vibe when I was reading it, and you follow a bunch of different point of view characters as they sort of make their way through this jade war that's about to explode. And it was a really captivating, fast-paced read. There was a lot of different point of view characters. It definitely went in directions I wasn't expecting with some of the main characters, and that was like shocking to me. I really need to pick up Jade War. I want to make that a priority in 2023, but I really loved it, and I think Fonda Lee did a really good way of like writing combat. I don't always love combat scenes. That's not the fantasy I gravitate towards, but she did a very, very good job. And then, I'm looking at my notes. And then the next book was actually the Goodread Choice Award winner. So we're going to talk about The Maid by Nita Prose. Here is a photo of that. I'm sure you heard of this book, so I will be brief with my thoughts, but I really liked it. Hence why it's on this list. So this is an author that I found this year. I think this is their debut as well, but I like this. It was a cozy mystery, murder mystery, but you basically follow this main character. I don't even remember her name. I don't have the book. I think I gave this to someone, I think, because that's why I don't have it. But you follow, I think her name is Molly, and she's a maid at this hotel. You can tell she's definitely neurodivergent. I think she suffers from autism. Being in her head is sort of an interesting place because she really is a very analytical thinker, but when she's accused of murder, she has to sort of go out of her way to try to solve it. This book really read to me as like a found family story, and the murder mystery was very compelling and very interesting. I loved it. It was definitely a new favorite, and I want to read more in this vein, because her as a main character was really unique. She made the book, and then all of the found family elements that we saw throughout the story really made it, and I could see why it was so popular in the Goodreads Choice Awards, and I really enjoyed it, and it's definitely a new favorite of mine. And then the next book is another book that I don't have a photo for, so you're gonna have to look at my picture, but that is Legends and Lattes, which this book took the world by storm, and it definitely stole my heart for sure. But here's a photo. For somebody that loves fantasy and doesn't always love high fantasy, I really love this book. This is a mix between what happens if Dungeons and Dragons characters had to go live in a small town. That is what this book was. And it just had so many elements that I love. But basically you follow this orc that decides she doesn't want to be an orc anymore and she wants to open up her own coffee shop. So you follow her as she sort of goes through that process of opening up her own coffee shop and, you know, that business process. And oh my goodness, it was delightful. It just it was like a warm hug. I know Travis Baldari is a audiobook narrator, so I picked up the audiobook to listen to in 2023 when I need a cozy read, but oh my goodness, this book was like a warm hug. I really want to get a physical copy, so I might add that to my TBR as well to like pick up, but oh, it was so cute. There was a little character that was making cinnamon rolls and it just made me so hungry. And again, this is another book sort of like The Maid that had a really big found family element to it that I really loved. And if you like Hallmark movies, like warm-hearted stories, this would be one for you because it was so adorable. And then another book that we are going to chat about is, oh, this is a thriller, and I had a very conflicted time with this author because one of their books made my best years of the books of the year list, and one of them will make my worst, but we have to talk about The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead because she convinced me. I will say that. She convinced me. I really love this book. I know a lot of people were saying it was very, very dark themed, but it was really good. So you basically follow this main character. One day she's listening to a podcast by someone she sort of knows, and all of a sudden she realized her best friend from college is murdered, and she may know something about it. So she sort of teams up with this podcaster to sort of uncover what happened to her best friend, how did her best friend die, and it is revealed that in college they were involved in a sex cult, and it is a wild ride. I was listening to the audiobook and it like blew my mind. It was a fast-paced adventure story. The characters were not perfect, but I didn't hate them, which is what was different from the other book I read by this author. But it was great. The twists and turns were really hard to predict, and I was captivated. Maybe it's because I've read the NXIVM. Like I've read a lot about the NXIVM case, but I just felt very, very captivated by the story. So 5 stars, really, really fast paced, and probably one of my favorite adult thrillers of the year. May be the only one that would have beat it out is probably The Maid. So those two were definitely my 2 favorites of the year, and I definitely want to find more books in those veins. The reason I sometimes struggle with murder mysteries and thrillers is that I find the characters super unlikable, and they have no redeeming qualities to me. This was a book that didn't do that, so that's why I liked it. And then another book that we are going to chat about is another book that I do not have a physical copy of. But I've heard about this. If you don't know, I started following a ridiculous amount of romance booktubers this year. If you ever want a list, I could tell you. But everyone that I follow was talking about this. So we're going to talk about Home Game by Odette Stone. Pretty photo. Admire his abs. They're stunning. This was the first romance, like not the first romance, but the first like romance that like I felt captured by. I don't always love romances, I'll be honest. Like pure romances, like some of these next ones I'm gonna chat about have a concept to them. This one really didn't, but it was a sports romance. I haven't read a sports romance in a very long time, but you basically follow this young man, or this, you know, this hockey player, sorry, it's a hockey player, and he is struggling with his taxes at like a coffee shop, and this girl next to him is like a whiz. She convinces him to help him, and she runs a little bit late. Little does the male lead know that she's homeless and she has to go to a shelter. He feels awful about this, and he kind of lets her stay the night, and then a couple of weeks later she gets into an accident and he has her stay with him. And it was just a very slow burn romance that I loved, and I felt like what I liked about this book was that both characters put in the work, and it wasn't like an instant attraction. You could tell both characters liked each other and respected each other a lot, but the romance took some time getting there, and I really enjoyed it. I read it over the course of a couple of nights when I was reading before bed, and I just enjoyed it. It was a quick read. One that I don't always love alpha heroes. I would say he definitely is an alpha hero, but he worked for me. And I do want to go back and read the other books in this series, but this book definitely worked for me. For sure. And I definitely want to go back and read more by this author, and I'm going to give more hockey romances a chance. Again, I said in another video, I don't really read a ton of like sports romances, but I might give it more of a shot. And then the last one that I don't have a physical copy of is Midnight Pleasures with a Scoundrel by Lorraine Heath. Here is a pretty photo. This is book 4 in the one of Lorraine Heath's series. The reason I like this is it had a trope I really liked. I'm not going to tell you what the trope is because it would be a spoiler, but it follows the last gentleman in this thing. I think he's maybe he's not a doctor. I think he's a private investigator, and he's sort of working with this young girl to figure out what happened to her sister, and they wind up having a relationship. It was fun. It was flirty time. It has one of my favorite tropes in it. I loved it. It was great. I love Lorraine Heath's writing, so this whole series was really, really good. One of the few series I was able to finish this year. But yeah, it was great. If you want like a fun time, I would check out this series. The whole series is great, but this is definitely my favorite of the series. In, you know, enjoyment order because I have physical copies. So this is one I read recently, and it's Shady Hollow by Junid Blake, and this is a cozy mystery set in a forest. Again, there was animal characters that I felt really invested in. There was a murder mystery. There was a small town feel. I loved it. It was a cozy read. If you read Legends and Lattes and want another one, I would pick this one up. It just felt like a cozy read. It felt like taking place in a forest. It was delightful. and it was one that just put a smile on my face when I was reading it, but there was a mystery element that was captivating me. And again, I think that it just was a unique take on a murder mystery and one that I found fun. So yeah, that is why it's on this list. I want to read the other 2 books. I think I'm going to get them in my next order when I got a lot of gift cards from Amazon that I haven't used yet. But I love this. I gave it 5 stars, and I'm super excited to see where the next series books in the series goes. So they haven't written anything in a long time, but I hope they'll write some more because I really do like these books. And then the next one I'm going to talk about is A Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sungnu Mandana. I love this book. I know some people found it was very similar to House on the Cerulean Sea. I obviously saw that it was similar, but I just liked it. But you basically follow this main character named Mika, and she winds up, she's a witch, but in this society, the witches are very isolated. They don't have that much attraction to each other, because when you get attached to people, it makes your magic a little bit weird. So she has to go help these 3 girls, the young witches, kind of control their powers, and things go from there. It's a very found family piece. There is a romance, which I loved, and it was just a cute, perfect read. It put a smile on my face. Again, another cozy read. The next book is also a cozy read, but it's definitely my favorite. And the romance worked for me. It was Grum Sunshine, and I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 5 stars. So, and if you're looking for something like House on the Cerulean Sea or like Legends and Lattes, I would definitely recommend these 2 because I think that you would enjoy them. And the last book I'm going to talk about in this little section is The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This is a fall-themed, romantic novel where a ghost writer winds up falling for a ghost that is haunting her because her parents own a funeral home, and it is fun. I will say it does have an HEA. The ghost is the love interest, so if you're hesitant to go into it, just know it was delightful. I loved it, and it was a quick read. I like the characters. I thought she was very, very quirky, and I just enjoyed it. And for a book that dealt a lot with death, like her dad died in the first 50 pages, it didn't feel very, very heavy-hearted. She was also being haunted by a ghost, but all of that just made me feel like I was reading a book from the Mediator series when I was a kid, but Jess just grew up, and I like that. So this is another 5-star read for me, and that is why it's on this list. So now let's get into the middle grade reads, and these are fun because these are probably some of my top reads of the year because they're ends of series. So let's get into it. Now I'm going to dive into my middle grade reads, and we're going to get into all my thoughts. So the first book we're going to chat about is Ravenfall by Kayla Josephine. I was on a blog tour for this book, but this book just worked for me. It has to do with Irish mythology, and it follows a main character who, she's a witch, but she has powers that are just a little bit unique, and whenever she touches someone, she could see a death in their life, I think. And she runs an inn that's sort of at the crossroads. And then when a young boy comes, Collar Pierce comes, who's looking for his older brother and his parents have been murdered, she sort of sees that encounter, and they have to sort of work together to save the day. What I really liked about this book is you did get dual point of views, and the characters were very different. They also did deal with vastly different, journeys and paths in this book. I loved it. It was like a warm hug. I was reading this when I was really suffering in my reading slump, and at work it was a quick read. I think I was on a blog tour for this too, but I kept it because I just loved it. I tabbed the hell out of it. It was just a great warm-hearted read. And I remember a couple of years ago I read Havenfall by Sarah Holland. That book didn't work for me. The mystical inn in this really was great, and I just loved how the family of the characters had a say in it. There was a lot of family dynamics in this book, and that's the middle grade books that tend to work the best for me because I feel like it's realistic. But I loved it. I gave it 5 stars, and we're going to talk about the next one. The next one I just picked up when I was traveling this summer. I got a bunch of books when I was traveling, and this is one I picked up. So Skander and the Unicorn Thief by A.F. Stedman is the first book in a new middle grade series, and I really love this book as well. You follow Skander, and his dream has always been to be a unicorn rider, and when his sister failed the year before, he thought that was done. He was never going to do it, but when he unexpectedly gets named as a unicorn rider, things go wrong. I would pitch this to people that love Fablehaven. I would pitch this to people that love Keeper of the Lost Cities, even Nevermore, but I think it's just going to be a very, very expansive series where the world keeps expanding. And I love the character friendships in here. It's very, very a friendship-focused story. There is a lot of action and adventure, and as you can see, I quoted it a lot, so I really enjoyed it, and I'm excited for book 2 because it's coming out this year. And then the next couple are books that are probably my tops of the year. We finally got the end in the Arusha series, and the Nectar of Immortality by Ronnie Choshki. I love this series. Definitely one of my favorites in the Rick Riordan Present. I don't think it's my top favorite, but it is pretty close. And this is the wrap of a series. I just think that this book had a moment where all the main characters were able to shine, and I think it just wrapped up the story so effectively. And I was really, really pleased that she got her ending. And I know Ronnie Choshki is writing another series for Rick Riordan Presents, which I'm super happy about. I don't want to talk too much about this because I don't want to spoil anything, but just know it was a really satisfying finale, and that is why it is on this list. Another book I'm going to chat about is Alina, Girl of Dragons by Julie Abe. This is the same author that wrote Eva Evergreen's Seven Magical Witch. She also wrote The Charmless, and this was a book that is a Cinderella retelling set before Eva Evergreen, so it's like a prequel. I love this. I devoured this. I cried. It was so sweet. I love the Eva Evergreen world, so it just was no doubt that I was going to love this. But oh my god, the Cinderella retelling was so heartfelt, and it just made me cry. Like, I was bawling when I was reading this. I just thought it was so sweet. It's basically like a Chinese version of Cinderella, and I don't want to say too much because I think you should go into it sort of blind, but I really, really love this book, and it just gave me, again, some more warm feels. I might do a cozy recommendation video because I have a lot of them that I read now that I'm looking at all these books. It's set in the same world, so you get to see the characters from Eva Evergreen when they were younger. Like, you get to see, I think, Eva's mom, and I just loved it. It was very, very sweet. You definitely expanded the magic in the story as well, and you expanded the world, and it was great. And the last book I'm going to talk about that is probably one of my top favorites of the year is definitely The Last Fallen Moon by Gracie Kim. This is another Rick Riordan Presents book, and oh boy, this was delightful. It was so different from book one, and even though it was so different, I loved it. This is about Korean witches. It also has a lot to do with found family, finding your own place in the world, and this took place in a totally different setting. I'll give you a hint. If you read House of Hades, this will remind you of that, and it was great. Very, very focused on the sister dynamics in this story, which is at the heart of it always. I love this. I'm excited to see Last Fallen Realm. But yeah, it just put a smile on my face. These are all of my top reads that were not YA this year. Let me know in the comments what are some books that you have that you really enjoyed. If I had to pick my two favorites, I would probably say one is The Dead Romantics, one is Legends and Lattes, one is The Maid, and for this column, Alina, Girl of Dragons, and The Last Fallen Moon. Those are definitely ones that I really, really loved. So, I'll talk to you guys for my next video. Stay safe and be well, and let's get reading in 2023. Bye, friends.